Not enough people are talking about Pablo Escobar's 200 cocaine hippos running wild in Colombia, now facing euthanasia. We're also going to get into Tulsi allegedly flying to Area 51, Anna Polina Luna talking about interdimensional beings, Tim Burchett talking about missing scientists, and of course, the car kill switch that will make your car turn off remotely, perhaps in the not so distant future. Maybe we'll get into some data center news as well, or opinions rather. Welcome back to Inverted World. I am fresh off the road. Did a 12-hour round trip to New York City and back to West Virginia. I got this tooth extracted. My molar was extracted, and it had been killing me for a long time. But not having health insurance for a while didn't help, and we had paid out of pocket for a lot of other things, so I kind of held off on that, and I was able to get it done now at a dentist I quite like, and I have a piece of bone in my mouth. I'm not sure I'm very comfortable with that. And as I'm sitting there in Manhattan, I literally jumped out of the car and ran up to the building. And I sit down, and I got this Chinese doctor, and he says to his assistant, "Open the bone." Behind me with his little, he's getting the needles and the hammers ready, and I'm like, "Where'd that bone come from anyway?" And he looks at me, he goes, "China." He's Chinese, but he's born here. And I'm like, "Are you sure?" He was joking, and I got it, and we were laughing. And he told me he had an assistant years ago who was really worried. He did the same procedure on her. And the assistant was worried, like, where did the bone come from? And he told her, I guess this is his favorite joke, that it came from China, fell off the back of a truck. Obviously, this is rooted in very real news because China is known for organ harvesting, among other things. And during COVID, you might remember the story of a lot of hair from the Uyghur Muslims that are in concentration camps in China coming over here and being caught at shipping depots. And there was a story recently in the news. There's a whole book, actually, by one of the journalists at Epic Times. Jan is his name, Jan. Jan Yekulik, I believe is his last name. I'm completely pulling that out of the thin air. About organ harvesting in China. Anyway, my Chinese dentist says to me that he told his assistant years ago, when she asked where the bone came from, he goes, "China." And she got really concerned. She didn't pick up on the joke at all. And he told me that he would call her every so often over a period of a few months after the graft, after extracting the tooth, and she'd pick up and he would just go, "Ni hao." I was dying. I was like, that's awesome. I like this guy. And he just said, he would tell her, like, that's the sound of your bone graft that fell off the back of a truck from China speaking to you, which then got us talking about Lucille Ball, thinking that she was hearing alien conversations in her teeth because she was actually picking up through a filling radio transmission. So the official story goes. And that was one of the first things I think I ever talked about on Inverted World was that. So not needless to say, we got along pretty well, except at the end. He did a great job. Very efficient, super funny. And at the very end, I'm like, before I get to that, as he's pulling it out, I think I have mutant teeth. I think I am a product of the landfill at which I grew up. As I've told you before, one of my sisters was born with and has an upside down molars. Her teeth back here came in upside down. We're mutants. We look mostly normal despite my freakish forehead. And I'm not freakishly tall. I'm 6'2", but like I look like a mutant. I think when I'm walking in the world, I feel like Sasquatch, and the forehead doesn't help, and my awkward gait is very Sasquatchian, and I just don't know what to do with these limbs. I'm part wacky inflatable guy, from a used car dealership, but he's pulling the tooth out and he's like, wow. And he just keeps saying, wow. And I can't see anything. I got this blinding light in front of me and half my face is numb. And he's like, this is the longest tooth I've ever seen. And I'm like, once he takes the thing out of my mouth so I can talk, I'm like, can I have my tooth? And he's like, no, unfortunately not. We had this great time. And at the end, he did not like that question. I'm like, I grew it. That's my tooth. He's like, we are not allowed to let anyone leave. I've had this conversation before. I've had teeth pulled before when I was younger, when I had braces about to be put on. And they didn't let me keep it then either, which I think is ridiculous. Like, what are you doing with my tooth? I'm like, are you sure it's going I asked him, I'm like, where's it going? Are you sure it's going to the trash? And sure, like, where does it go? What are you doing with my tooth? Are you cloning me? These are things you have to be worried about. And I'm going to go back and try to see. I have pictures of it. Maybe I'll put one here if I remember. But maybe I should have warned you first, and I'll tell Alex to put it here instead because it's very bloody. It's a big tooth. Looks like a horse tooth. Maybe there's something from growing up around horses on a landfill where I'm actually, for all the times I've made fun of Dave Rubin looking like he's stuck mid-anamorph, I might actually be mid-anamorph turning into a horse. But no, it was good to be back in New York City. My wife and I spent a lot of time there. I lived there for quite some time in Brooklyn, worked in Manhattan. Our oldest was born there. I love that city despite what it's become. It really does look so. For those who remember 1990, I was 5. One of the greatest movies of all time came out. That's the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I swear we're going to get to Cocaine Hippos in a minute, but I just felt like I need to get this off my chest. I know there's going to be people like, he's on pain meds. I'm not on anything, and I am in some pain. You might tell I have some swelling on this side. But I slept well because I drove for 12 hours. But I'm still beat and sore. Anyway, we'll get to Cocaine Hippos. And the city looks like the way the city looks in the beginning of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was walking down Canal Street after the tooth came out, holding my wife. Like, people are walking up on us real fast, which is normal. But I'm like, I'm on extra high alert. When you have a kid in the city, which we did for a while, you're on very high alert. And I haven't had that feeling in quite some time. I'm like, you just got to be aware of your surroundings. We're dodging human feces. There's a man with gangrene on his feet, like outside this very posh supermarket. The subways seem more dangerous than ever, which is saying a lot considering that I remember 10 years ago, around the late summer of 2015, taking the train from Brooklyn to Harlem. Our doctor was in Harlem. I love Harlem. And shout out DMX and ASAP Rocky. There's some ASAP songs I really do like, but I think of, was it DMX from Harlem? Rough Riders. Shout out to Rough Riders, both Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders and DMX's Rough Riders, by the way. But we were taking the subway to Harlem, and this dude hopped on the subway and was like looking at all of us saying he's going to chop our heads off. And he had this beautiful voice. So I was captured by this voice. Like, wow, this guy should be like in a chorus or something. He sounded like Gil Scott-Heron, if you are familiar with the poet, the late great poet Gil Scott-Heron. His song "The Devil and Me" is a crazy song. Anyway, that was getting to be a time of the city that was sounding a lot like what my grandfather would tell me about in the 70s, because there was a surge in violence. I had seen it in the 90s when it was cleaned up quite a bit from Rudy Giuliani taking over. I can't talk now more than ever because of the tooth. But anyway, Rudy did just really send those homeless people up north to where I was living, in like near Newburgh, New York. So he cleaned up the city, but he just sent it up to us an hour north. All the problems, and Newburgh became one of the most dangerous cities in the country, actually. But yeah, walking around the city was intense and beautiful, and I missed it. But it's also insane. It's the first time I'm there since January, so first time I'm there since Mom Donnie. And when we were there, he's announcing that there's this budget crisis, and I'm like, you guys need. I know what the city's potential is. It's a great city. So much of what I love came from that city, family wise, but also art wise. the American supermarket, all that early stuff with the Liechtenstein, and I'm not a huge Warhol fan, but he was part of that era, and the supermarket, and like the punk rock scene and CBGBs. Love all that stuff. The early tattoo scene with Tom DeVita, that's stuff that's very dear to my heart. If you care about tattooing and love tattoo history, the great Vice Age, Tattoo Age documentary features Tom DeVita, who lived in Newburgh, who I got to meet a few times. Amazing artist. He would go on to inspire like the Ed Hardys, and I wasn't a huge Ed Hardy fan, but I love the traditional artwork style of like flash on a tattoo wall from the late 1800s, early 1900s. I'm covered in a lot of that tattoo stuff. I, as you know, managed a tattoo shop for quite some time in New York, but I love all that about New York. I know what its potential is. I know it can be clean and safe, and it's not that way right now. It is really, really degenerate. There's a very bad energy there, which was weird to have with all of my nostalgia of becoming a father in that city and traveling that city, despite having to be on high alert and watching out for your wife and watching out for your kid. You know, the museums and the art. I love all that stuff. And the parks, even though the parks are mostly built on top of graveyards, like most of everything in the world was once a graveyard. But yes, Indian billionaire heir offers to save 80 of Pablo Escobar's cocaine hippos from Colombian cull. It's been a bad few days for animals in the news. I don't know if you saw the other story. I didn't pull it up. Maybe we'll do that. It's just super dark. That's why I didn't do it, but I'll tell you about it anyway. A woman from Illinois was, I believe she was arrested for hiring people to make torture videos of monkeys. I mean, insane videos. I don't want to get into the details. I really don't want to read that story. I love animals, and I don't like seeing this happen to them. And, that's just insane. There's a whole community of people who are purchasing those types of videos. And, now she's in trouble, as she should, because that's disgusting. But now we have these cocaine hippos in Colombia. And if you've been watching the last few weeks, you've known there's a weird pattern emerging of animals on cocaine. Sharks on cocaine, hippos on cocaine, salmon on cocaine, and all for different reasons. The sharks are on spring break in the Bahamas on cocaine. They're soaking up the coke in the waters off the Bahamas. The salmon are being given cocaine by scientists. The scientists are, we know now, Kid Rock, George W. Bush, and who else is there? I forget the other one. Hunter Biden, of course. How could I forget? And now these cocaine hippos, they face a cull. And I was just like, you know what? Let's get into this, because I'm not seeing enough people talk about the cocaine hippos. And we have this Indian magnate, Anant Ambani. He's the son of the billionaire Mukesh Ambani, and he's offered to take in at his wildlife sanctuary in India 80 cocaine hippos. I think there's actually 200. So like, what's happening to the other 120 that are currently living in Colombia, where the government is planning to cull them? You remember we had Viva Fry on a few months ago to talk about the culling of the ostriches at the ostrich farm in Canada, which was an insane story too that seemed completely unnecessary. And you can go back and find that video. I think it was really important, and he gave us a lot of really interesting information, very scary information. But the culling of animals has been happening for quite some time, but the culling of animals out of hysteria seems to be a pretty modern thing. I mean, we could talk about the sacrificing to false gods of animals and children throughout the ages for sure, but there's the modern aspect now of like a new modern fear like COVID, where they're culling all the mink. I think it was mink. I always get it wrong with the animal, whether it was Finland or Sweden, it was mink, or I don't know. It wasn't skunk, but they culled like hundreds of thousands of them during COVID, and they were worried they were going to spread COVID. And then the next problem was that they buried them in shallow graves, and then they started to notice that the corpses of the mink were rising to the surface, and they had a problem. Now they were really afraid of disease plus COVID, fake COVID, and they had to then dig them all up and burn them. And this was happening all over the place in different ways. We had I think it was in Australia, dog, like a sanctuary. People could adopt dogs, and people wanted to come get dogs as they were locking down the country. And they were like, no, actually, we're going to kill the dogs. And they did. And it's like insane. So, but this is happening in Colombia because I believe these hippos are running amok. The hippos are descended from animals introduced to the country in the 1980s by Pablo Escobar. One of my favorite sentences. One of Colombia's top drug lords who sought to have one of the largest private zoos in Latin America with a wide variety of animals. The life of Pablo. Since then, that's not who Kanye was talking about, but I always think of Pablo Escobar when I hear that album, or Picasso. Since then, their population has exploded to around 160 individuals, and their presence is now endangering native species. A few weeks ago, Colombia said it planned to call 80 of these animals, sparking debate. Ambani asked the Colombian government to reconsider the decision, proposing to house them at his rescue center. These 80 hippos did not choose where to be born, nor did they create the circumstances they now face, he said in a social media post. These animals are living, sentient beings, and if we have the capacity to save them through a safe and humane solution, we have the responsibility to try and continue to feed them cocaine. I might have misread that last part, but the rest is his. And this guy's a snappy dresser. But shout out to him for wanting to save him. Could you imagine what that's going to look like? I mean, he's got all the money to transport them, but imagine just being that hippo descending from the hippo cocaine line, that cocaine lineage, that descendant of cocaine, and being shipped across. I guess they're going to have to put him on a barge and bring him across, which is a problem right now in the news too. Another thing we don't have to get into, but this is a true story from this week. Timmy, the humpback whale, is currently stranded in shallow waters in a barge outside of Germany. I went down a weird rabbit hole on the drive to New York, clearly. These animals are living sentient beings, he said. In the city of Jamnajir in the state of Gujarat, Ambani founded the conservation center Vantara, which houses more than 150,000 animals from over 2,000 wildlife species, according to its official website. It's incredible. I hope they're... I love when people can save animals, you know. I'm not this... I don't like PETA. I think PETA is antithetical to actually saving animals. They've actually participated in killing of animals and monkeys in particular. Super not cool, you know. And also, I don't like animal experimentation, which was coming up when we were talking about headless human bodies being created for experiments to save animals. Which I'm like, okay, I get the debate, but maybe we can just test all this stuff on pedophiles instead of making these weird headless human bodies that Elon Musk is going to want to marry one day. This is where he proposes to relocate 80 of the Colombian hippos, which currently live around Hacienda Napoles, a rural estate located in Puerto Triunfo, at the Antioquia department that once belonged to Escobar and is now used for tourism activities. So many different moving parts here. We got cocaine hippos, Indian magnate, billionaire magnate son, the Escobar ring, and all the weird stuff going on between our government and Escobar, tourism activities. It is a good story. We are willing to receive and care for these hippos in a specially designed and enriched environment conceived to guarantee their well-being, and at the same time, we will give them mounds of cocaine, says a statement published Monday, signed by Vantara CEO Vivan Karani. In the letter addressed to Colombia's Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, Irene Velez Torres, Vantara executives make a call to respectfully appeal the Colombian government's decision. Love this story. If the Colombian government approves the request, it would be carried out in strict accordance with the necessary approvals, permits, due diligence, processes, biosecurity requirements, and logistical planning, Karani explained in the statement, offering lifetime care for the animals under the principle of causing no harm to any living being. CNN reached out to Colombia's Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development and Minister Velez regarding the reception, and they are still awaiting their response. That's fantastic. Say a prayer for the cocaine hippos. I'm being told that using the word cocaine in episodes is deboosting these episodes. But I'm not gonna change. I hate when people are like little mustache man. You know, I think these are just ridiculous things that make people. It's like getting a vaccine card when you didn't get the vaccine. Like, I don't feel like participating in these stupid loopholes to appease a robot. Look, if a few people don't watch it, if 1,000 people don't watch it because I refuse to change the word cocaine or murder, then so be it. I don't like playing these word games. I listened to the beginning of like this talk about the origins of the universe with different mathematicians and believers in Christ and scientists who say they're Christian. And I forget the one gentleman's name. He's an Irish guy. He's an interesting guy. I'm not sure if I believe everything he says, but he did say something that I was listening to last night that I really liked, that the universe is language based. You know, in the beginning was the word, which I'm with that, you know. And as I say, this is why we look at things so carefully when we're reading these things, even down to the M dash. And shout out to the people who reached out or commented saying they also use M dashes. Not so much a fan of the N dash. That is the other type of dash, a smaller dash, EN dash. I like the EMM dash. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. And how dare these robots try to take that from us? Don't let people tell you sound like you're writing like your writing is AI because you use M dashes. Proudly use the M dash. We will take it back, just like we need to take the rainbow back from the Rainbow Brigade, because the rainbow is a beautiful image from the Bible. And when my kids were seeing different rainbow flags in the world, I would say those people must really love the Book of Genesis. We'll have that conversation later. But they are saying these hippos are an invasive species, invasive cocaine hippo species. The measure to authorize the culling of 80 of these specimens is due to uncontrolled growth of the invasive species along the river basin, said Minister Velez when making this decision. Without this action, it is impossible to control the population. And as we have already seen, estimates imply that by 2030, we would have at least 500 cocaine hippos. They did not say that. 500 hippos affecting our ecosystems and native species, such as the manatee and the river turtle. It is especially, it is with responsibility for our ecosystem that we must take these actions. So there you have it. They're trying to save these hippos. I hope it happens. Where I owned a house once, the first house we owned in New York was in a small town that had been invaded by geese. And I had recently posted a picture of this house on Instagram and Twitter. Just thinking about, early days of just learning to be a parent and COVID. We closed on that house the day New York locked down. Just so happened to be the day New York locked down for COVID. And we had a 4-year-old and another on the way. Our middle child was on the way. She'd be born later that summer. And it was April and at the time when we shut down in New York. And it was an old rundown country house. And in this town, they'd been invaded by Canadian geese. And I also wrote about this in early Inverted World articles and in the first book. Someone at the state level approved this idea. Oh man, they were like, we're just gonna kidnap the geese and move them somewhere else. Does that sound familiar? Already, I mentioned something similar in this episode. They literally stole that idea from Rudy. I can't talk. Like, I know I can't usually talk, but like, it actually hurts, and I can't pronounce certain things. Rudy can't do that so well. Forgive me. I'll be better soon. And I'm getting like a tooth put in, but like this had to come out, and I don't know, this whole thing. It's a whole process. At a certain point, they're just going to slip the Neuralink in there without my consent, and then you'll know when things have changed. When I'm like, there's no conspiracy. Everything is ridiculous if you question anything. And you know, they gave them the Neuralink. They finally slipped it in. It's like that story that went viral that may or may not be true about Israeli dentist spies invading Iran and somehow getting to generals in the Iranian army and slipping in tracking devices in their teeth. And a lot of dentists on Twitter were like, I'm a dentist and this is impossible. I'm like, you know what? Nothing's impossible. I don't know what's real anymore. We're in post-reality, but I'm going to take that information. I'll remember that because I already grew up not trusting scientists. I watched Little Shop of Horrors enough times to understand what dentists really do. I also really didn't like the dentist growing up in my town. I almost said his name. I don't want to do it to him. I've said so many things on podcasts that do come back to me, and I get in trouble for doing things like for private, people who are not public saying things. And I've learned my lesson, when I first started doing this. I'll get back to the geese in a second. This is what you get for a tired, even though I've slept in pain, non-clone Shane. See, it's me. And the dentist, I thought killed my mom when I was a kid, and because he put her under, and I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I didn't know, like, why would my mom even bring me alone to get a procedure done? And I walk in the back, like, she was completely out cold, and I start saying to the dentist, you killed my mom," and he thought that was hilarious. And I saw this dentist up until like my late teens, and he reminded me of me thinking he killed my mom every time. So that, on top of the knowledge I gained from Little Shop of Horrors, he's got a really hilarious name, but I'm not going to do that to him. I learned my lesson. I'm getting back to the geese, and I'm going to get back to the hippos if we're not done fully yet. And if you're sticking with me on this tangential episode of Inverter World, God bless you. When I first got hired at Timcast, I was fairly new into the podcast world. I've been doing my own podcast to a very small audience, but we had a very dedicated audience, and it was a really fun show. And that show fell apart, and my co-host just erased everything from the internet, which is a bummer. And I know some of you guys actually remember those days. It was a fun show. And I came down, we were selling our house in New York that I just told you about. We were going to buy a house here, and we looked at a house I loved in the middle of nowhere. We love old rundown houses. Like, I don't care if it's rotting. we can fix it up. I'm not the most handiest, but I can learn quickly. I have YouTube, and I have friends who are handy, and I like working on things. I like using my hands. I like building. I like ripping things up and digging, and just making things beautiful as best I can with what little money we have. And that's why we thankfully, our taste of these old rotting houses is something we can sometimes somewhat afford. But found this house, lovely. I told this story a long time ago, but I'll tell it again quickly. I swear I'll move on. But when we get there, the owner of that house happened to be there, which doesn't really happen much in all the times we've looked at houses. And within 10 or 15 minutes, she told me she wished every Republican would just drop dead. And I'm walking the property, this beautiful property with her, looks beautiful yard, forest in the distance, way tucked away from civilization, just like how I like it. And I tell her, that's a terrible thing to think. Why would you want all these people to die? That's a horrible thing. I'm like, don't you support life? I'm sure she was pro-abortion, but she knew what I was getting at. We're fresh off BLM and wanting to protect people. And I'm like, I think that's terrible to think that way. And I told her that. So I told a very exaggerated story of this on 2 podcasts immediately after. One of those was on IRL that night. I didn't say her name or anything. And another version of that story, which is even more exaggerated, was on my old show. I talked about, it was ridiculous. Anyway, the next morning we wake up to frantic phone calls from our realtor. The podcasts have been seen by every party involved, all the realtors on both sides, the realtors' offices, and the people we were buying the house from. We were in contract. Oh, man, they canceled the contract. So I'm saying I try to be careful every now and then with private people. Even though I didn't say names, I didn't say anything, but they knew. And they were furious. And it cost us a house. Sorry, Nancy. Sorry. My wife, we got a really good laugh out of it because they had to, if you go, I wish it was still online. I wish my co-host didn't take it down. It was a shining moment of mine. I was very proud, although I learned my lesson, I'm not going to talk about private things all the time, although that's not a promise. That's not a promise at all. But I don't know how it got to them so quickly, but she heard some crazy thing. I think I called her a goblin, and that she was trying to like French kiss me with her gross goblin tongue. It was pretty brutal. And we were dying because we had to play it back because our realtor was like, what was going on? I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I was just having some fun. Well, they're not going to sell you the house now. Like, well, then it wasn't meant to be, I guess. Anyway, that was a long tangent, and thank you for humoring me. Save the hippos. Next up, Anna Plena Luna is talking about interdimensional beings again. She's on a show yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today. It is Wednesday morning. Rep. Anna Plena Luna says the American public is on the verge of getting long-awaited answers. She's been saying this for a minute. And hence, proof of non-human life is about to be revealed, describing them as interdimensional beings. Luna says she has personally witnessed things she cannot explain and that the public will soon have to see them for themselves. And draw their own conclusions. Let's listen to it. It's not that long of a clip, but I pulled it up anyway. We'll do it. Well, yeah, we'll talk about what I think in a sec. Let's tune in here. This is I think it's a New York Post podcast. I'm not really sure. It doesn't say, unfortunately.
I think you've said in the past that you've seen yourself evidence of interdimensional beings.
Sorry, real quick, I just want to say this is from Podforce One podcast. The logo looks a lot like the New York Post.
You've said in the past that you've seen yourself evidence of interdimensional beings. What's that, aliens or?
So the interdimensional beings is what our witnesses will call these things. I have seen evidence in a skiff that leads me to believe there are things we cannot explain, and I have observed things that are of non-human origin and creation. That's my opinion. Again, but there has been a declassification order from the president, and you will see as soon as that stuff comes up.
Right. So do you think that the American public's going to be super surprised?
I love the host. She's like, right. And she smiles, long, drawn-out smile.
When this comes out, or is it going to be a bit of a nothing burger?
Well, I don't think it'll be a nothing burger. But, we're not going to tell the American people what to make of it. But I think, when, again, you saw my last hearing that I did with the task force where there was some footage that was entered into the archive, and it's pretty shocking for people. I don't know much tech that can deflect a Hellfire missile. I don't know about you. But, I think
so
that's
what do
the
you
type
think?
of footage that you'll see.
So what do you, if you had to just make a decision now about whether there really were, I guess, aliens moving among us with their strange machines that have all sorts of powers, do you think that's plausible?
I don't call them aliens, and I don't know what these things are that they're using, right? But I think that there's stuff that we have witnessed as members of Congress, been briefed on that we cannot explain. And I will leave it at that because that's going to be coming out soon. And I think that the American people will have many of their questions answered. But, there's stuff declassified years ago out of the Pentagon. Multiple videos, Tic Tacs. I think Tucker Carlson family actually had shown one of the videos. It looked like a pyramid that was flying around. And, people see it. They're like, yep, we knew it. And then they move on. So I don't think that, the Earth is going to stop moving. But I think that for a lot of people that are paying attention, it's just confirmation of kind of something that we already suspected.
I have a very hard time taking these people seriously. I think she means well. I think she means well. But I don't think this is as real as she thinks it is. I think they are manufacturing a narrative. It's like watching Kash Patel smoke a cigar on Joe Rogan while he's totally fumbling the interview and knows nothing of consequence when it comes to the Epstein files. Like Joe Rogan knew details that most of us would know, and Kash didn't know anything. It just seems contrived, and like she kind of says it there herself. It's going to confirm your bias, confirm things you already know. They're banking on that. It's part of why I think they're going after the conspiracy theorist in a way that seems like they're teaming up with the conspiracy theorist. Do not be ashamed of being a conspiracy theorist that questions your confirmation bias. That's what keeps your brain sharp. We can't let them think that they're never on our side. Even if they're nice, you have a nice smile. You might think Miss Luna's attractive. She's a pretty woman. But there's a reason they are using her. Her last name's not Luna. This is a character, in my opinion, and a character to help accelerate disclosure and ingratiate themselves into the dissident movement. So we have to be very careful about believing anything that comes out of their mouth. This is the government. Despite them doing podcasts, sharing memes, saying interdimensional beings like they're Alex Jones, to me, doesn't mean anything. I'm interested. I want to see what they have to say, but I'm not totally on board. I want to see what they have. I really do want to see what they have. But we also have this. This is from George Knapp, who was I talked about him recently. That he's the guy who testified saying that Lockheed Martin was in possession of extraterrestrial technology, and here he is talking to Jeremy Corbell, and who I'm not the biggest fan of, which makes me suspicious of anyone in Corbell's orbit like Knapp. But I like listening to Knapp, and I think he's a smart dude, and his testimony was really interesting. Here is he.
Here in Nevada, I'd been seeing these hints for a couple of days that the VIP visitor was going to be out at Groom Lake. And apparently yesterday, I don't know if Representative Burleson was with this VIP, but the VIP in question is supposedly Tulsi Gabbard, who made a visit. Flew into Nellis, then took a little Janet plane, I think, and went to Groom Lake, and then came back and left Las Vegas yesterday. And I don't know, we've pressed Eric Burleson about which facilities he'll be visiting on his national security tour. I don't want to give anything away, but I hope he was in that plane along with Tulsi Gabbard here in Nevada. I've been seeing these.
What do you think? Do you think Tulsi Gabbard went to Area 51? I think anything's possible. We know Burleson has been traveling around, and they've put him. I think it's so funny. It's just me and my silly brain, but all of a sudden Burleson's wearing these like Hogwarts glasses everywhere. I'm like, is that just to make him look like he's like, this is a movie, for these people. They're all playing a part. Like Luna's playing a part. They might not know they're playing a part, right? It's like I'll hear criticism about, I think the events surrounding the recent assassination attempt are staged. That doesn't mean I don't think Trump has a hand in this. Just like I don't think Luna is like, yeah, behind the scenes, like, we're going to get them with this. They don't realize they're part of a movie script. They don't realize they're playing a part. And they try to do that to all of us. They as in the ancient evil that has been operating since the fall of man. And I don't think Trump's there like, I need better midterm results for the Republican Party. I need more people to sympathize for me. It's not him. It's not Trump. This is faceless, nameless evil that is orchestrating these things. That's my take. You might think Trump is in on it. And you know what? Anything's possible. We know we've had people in government who have entertained false flags, if not carried them out. But is Tulsi going to Area 51? I guess we'll find out. It might be part of disclosure. It might be part of whatever's coming up. There's so many stories swirling around the internet every day about disclosure, where we're heading, what's going to fall out of the sky. Will it be real? Will it be man-made? I think a lot of this stuff is man-made. I believe in demons. And I think a lot of this stuff is demon-made but what I mean is made by humans who are possessed by evil. It's not to say all technology is, but what I'm saying is there are people who feed off human suffering, and they build technology to make the most amount of suffering happen at the quickest rate, and they get off on that. And there's all types of way of them doing that, whether it's hurting children or bombing cities. There's a weird tendril connecting those types of attitudes of evil. And some of those people do both. Maybe not some, maybe a lot. Maybe it's more than we like to admit. But I think that's the case. I think there's probably more than we'd like to admit. Having read the Epstein files, having already known, what a lot of people have gone to jail for and had admitted to, that's probably the case for a lot of these people. And a lot of these people right now are really covering up for the Epstein story by bombing Iran, killing those schoolgirls, for talking about UFOs now, for completely shifting the narrative from Epstein files to aliens as we approach so-called disclosure. Rep Burleson is now talking about the missing scientists some more. I have this from Cyber News. All this is part of the narrative. I'm sure you know this if you're tuning in. There is a narrative at hand. The narrative is trying to convince you to believe in a certain reality, a reality that will rewrite human history, that will be in opposition to those who read the Bible and believe it in a literal sense. We can have different interpretations. Obviously, there's many different denominations. But Bible-believing Christians who are some of the last road bumps, obstacles on the way to the narrative machine, totally devouring the last reality as it moves into the new reality of aliens and new human history, ancient aliens and breakaway civilizations, which I do believe in that part. The Christians and the dissidents, and there's a big overlap in that, although there's also a huge overlap of Christians and neocons that don't believe in any of this stuff. Like the Zionist faction of like the Daily Wire type mindset or Fox News type mindset. We have all of that in opposition, and they're trying to build the narrative so that it can seamlessly weave into the Christian mindset or the biblical mindset or anyone who's religious. But really, it is going after the more Christian mindset by trying to have people like Burleson, or like not Burleson so much, but like Luna, although Burleson too, he's a real UFO guy, and he tries to talk about Christianity. We did when we did the culture war, but they're trying to bridge that gap between how can we make the Christians believe in extraterrestrials in the way we need them to. And I know a lot of us have disagreements on what we think of as aliens or demons, and that's fine. And these conversations are important, but we are coming to the cliff now of the narrative where you're going to have to believe in a certain form of reality and ancient history to be accepted into public discourse, which is fascinating. This is the way we're moving. I mean, this is at the highest levels of government now. This is the conversation. These headlines are happening every day in CNN. There's no longer a taboo attached to it. The taboo that's attached to it now is the more Christian dissident mindset of not believing it, of thinking false flags, but also understanding there's real evil in the world, and that evil is demonic, and it's also spilling out of the Epstein files, but now we're no longer talking about that. Now there's a new way of talking about this stuff. So it's a rebrand happening. I guess it's the simplest way of putting it. There's a rebrand happening. So as claims about another scientist circulate within UFO-related discourse, Congressman Tim Burchett, I'm sorry, yeah, I said Burleson earlier. I meant to say Tim Burchett for this story, has added a more explicit edge to the conversation, suggesting that the pattern points to one of only two explanations. Speculation has been mounting to unprecedented levels recently regarding missing or deceased figures connected to secretive space programs. Though when it comes to the dead or missing individuals linked to UFO disclosure, they aren't all technically scientists, which is true. It's easy to say they're all dead or missing scientists, but some of them were more like just government contractors. One of them might be more of a janitor, which is why I go back to this episode where I'm talking about like the pattern, and they're trying to make the autistic pattern recognizers like myself lump all this into one pattern, whereas it's not that easy. If you look at the nuance of it, it's all complex. But this is what I just wanted to add this into the conversation today. This is from Burchett. I think clearly, he says, someone's sending a message of one or two things. Either they want to squash our technology or they're warning others not to come forward. There's a lot at stake, and we're poking the hornet's nest. So this is the same guy who says, you know, we'd set America on fire and people lose their minds if we saw what he saw. Which, like I told you, reminded me of when RoboCop, what's his name? Dan Bongino. RoboCop without a helmet, Dan Bongino said, "You wouldn't believe the things I saw. If you saw the things I saw, you'd lose your mind too." and then he just walks out of the FBI with his tail between his legs and has his podcast. Cool, dude. Oh, a lot of people watch your podcast? I bet. How many of them are bots? How many of them are bots? You own that platform. You own Rumble with Peter Thiel, JD Vance, and Vivek. We know this. I gotta whisper it so the robots don't pick it up clearly. But it's okay. We all know Dan Bongino funds Rumble with Peter Thiel and JD Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy, and Canadians own it. I love the Rumble audience, but the people who run Rumble, I think, are as awful as the people who run YouTube. Both platforms could use a lot of help. I love our audience on Rumble and YouTube. Like I say all the time, we have the best audience. You guys are hilarious, and shout out to you guys. But I'm sure you might agree that there's things that are wrong with the platforms. I mean, I know the YouTube one's an easy one with all the problems, but Rumble too. And I don't have much faith in the people at the top of either platform. Never liked Vivek. I never liked JD Vance. I never liked Peter Thiel. I had a little bit of hope for Dan Bongino, but he was a complete failure. And he's just another condescending prick who is better than everybody else. But if you go, please look up RoboCop without the helmet. That is Dan Bongino. We also have this from Burleson before I move on. I'm going to rush through the next one. Maybe I'll finish up quick because the side of my face is just it's not fun. But I wanted to say some stuff. I had some stuff I get off my chest from that car ride. All these tangents I had. So Burleson yesterday tweeted this, a new name for the list, and we talked about this, but now Burleson is talking about it. A young scientist named Joshua working on the nuclear propulsion technology we'd need to reach Mars just turned up dead in a Tesla car crash after his car drove 2 hours by itself on rural Missouri-style back roads, body burnt beyond recognition. So we talked about that last week. You see the pattern hasn't just emerged, it's now taking hold of the headlines. And there's a sort of hysteria that comes around this. Now, who's not safe? Who's safe? Who's going to be attacked next? Is it just scientists? It was David Wilcock too. Did he really kill himself? Did he not? It seems like he might have. But I don't know. I question everything. While also trying to remain anchored in reality, in objective reality that we know exists below the organic evil simulation that they've stapled onto the objective reality that's down here that we know exists. We know there is objective truth. I believe in real capital T truth because I believe in God and I believe in God's objective reality. But evil people have stapled like a fake face on top of, like face off on top of reality, this false reality that I don't think we need to be buying into. We know how much they lied. They didn't just stop. So yeah, and then Disclosure Day is ramping up, the movie. That's also happening. Something to keep in the back of your minds is this, as we get closer to the movie, I believe this is a Spielberg movie, right? So this is big. This is, Spielberg is always it's a big blockbuster name. I think we're going to see a lot more news and quote unquote disclosure through the government as we get closer to this, because it's going to ramp up. Roswell anniversary coming up. The disclosure conversation's been ramping up. The movie Disclosure Day is coming up. It's fascinating. I think it's all part of a spell. All right, I'm going to try to get through this, even though my mouth freaking hurts. And I'm sorry if I sound normal to myself somewhat, but it's very possible that this airs tonight, and I just I sound like the teacher from Peanuts. Explaining the car kill switch controversy. So I picked two different articles. One is from Kelly Blue Book, and this is from January. So now we know that they're passing this thing, and this is from January when it was being debated. From Kelly Blue Book. A growing social media frenzy suggests that the federal government will soon require a kill switch in new cars. In its most extreme form, the claim says it would let government officials deactivate all cars remotely. The rumor spiraled last week as politicians got involved. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is known for wearing heels, posted to X, the social media site formerly known as Twitter, saying the idea that the federal government would require auto manufacturers to equip cars with a kill switch that can be controlled by the government is something you'd expect in Orwell's 1984. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. What is the controversy that pits Mothers Against Drunk Driving against the governor of Florida and some House Republicans? It's only about drunk driving tech, they say, just like Neuralink is just about curing seizures and letting the disabled walk again. There's nothing nefarious that could ever happen past that. The law in question is known as the Halt Drunk Driving Act and was passed as part of the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It passed both the Senate and House that year with the support of all Democrats and 19 Republicans in the former and 200 Democrats and 13 Republicans in the latter. Among other things, the law required the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to write new rules requiring automakers to install anti-drunken driving technology in new cars within 5 years after passage. The law's text is relatively short. It tells the agency to require a passive system that monitors a driver's performance to identify impairment of a driver, passively detects a blood alcohol level equal to and exceeding 0.08 blood alcohol content, or detects impairment and prevents or limits vehicle operation. So Congress passes laws. Agencies like the NHTSA write regulations that explain the specifics of how those laws will be carried out. When an agency writes a new regulation, it must post drafts for public comment, allow time for the public to respond, and then finalize them. To date, NHTSA has not posted a draft. Congress gave the agency, remember this is from January, Congress gave the agency 5 years to complete the rule, but required a draft in 2024. No draft has been published. Social media rumors began circulating in recent weeks, fixated on the term kill switch. Rumors suggest the measure would give the government the ability to deactivate cars remotely. That prompted some House members to attempt to repeal the Halt Drunk Driving Act last week, but the effort failed. Politicians have adopted the claim. Rep. Keith Self, Republican from Texas, posted on X that the measure would ensure the government can shut off your car whenever it wants. He's not wrong, in my opinion. The law arguably creates a kill switch. The technology would let a car deactivate itself if a system determined that the driver was likely impaired. It does not create a kill switch that anyone outside the vehicle could control. That, how do you know that, Kelly Blue Book? How do you know that? I mean, nothing is off limits when it comes to hacking, when it comes to technology. Some privacy advocates worry, however, that any shutdown technology could eventually allow remote control, as today's cars increasingly communicate with external servers as they drive. To date, those servers belong to automakers. That doesn't matter. Facebook didn't technically belong to the government, although the government, you could argue, did create Facebook out of DARPA. This is never how it works. They always try to tell you, this is just to keep you safe. We promise. We would never lie to you. We're totally honest all the time. We're the government. We're here to help you, okay? Give me a break. They're focused, these people who are worried about it, the automakers are focused with the word passive in the bill, something like an in-car breathalyzer likely to activate to pass legal muster. But many of today's cars can already have systems monitoring the driver's attention. Sure, they work with hands-free highway driving assistants like GM's Super Cruise or Tesla's full self-driving system. Some systems use a camera to track the driver's eyes. Others use accelerometers to detect stable inputs to steering. NHTSA could mandate such systems which might detect an impaired driver. Since most automakers already build them into some cars, they could spread them all to all vehicles to meet the new mandate. And so MAD does want this. there's going to be no stopping this. Like, drunk driving is wrong, and don't do it. But there's going to be no stopping this. It's like the war on drugs didn't stop drugs. The war on terror didn't stop terror. And unfortunately, the government promotes both those things. Just ask Escobar. Just ask Osama bin Laden. Or some of these people that we, created to infiltrate Al-Qaeda or ISIS who come here and then become mass shooters. We kind of create the things that we say we're at war with, we also create. Did you know that? Is this news to you? I bet it's not. You guys understand what's going on here. It's never just a headline that's the truth. This is not breaking news, but it's just the breaking news is cyclical. This is always happening. It's newfangled technology. It's just to help you. They're arresting people for memes in other countries. You don't think that at some point when we had the social credit score here, which people will be gleeful about, no matter who's in position of power, it doesn't matter. Trump is completely on board with the people who are building the apparatus for the social credit score. We're at that point now where the social credit score that China has will come here. And you don't think that at some point, if you said something on Twitter they didn't like, they're just going to be, hey, you can't drive today. Sorry about that. Sorry, we're not going to let you go to work today. You can't take that money out of your bank account. Yeah, not today. We didn't like what you said about us. We didn't like that joke. We didn't like that meme you shared. It sounds ridiculous, but that is happening in other countries. And sometimes, many times, those ideas find their way here. We have our own version of MAID from Canada happening here, and they're already trying to loosen up those rules so it can be as loose as it is in Canada. It's unfortunate, but this is how evil spreads. And I will say there are many people coming together in a great form of political unification to push out data centers. Oh, data centers bring in jobs, though. You're a liar. You are a liar. Are you being paid by Peter Thiel to say that? Like, I've seen this argument all the time. It's a lie. These data centers are probably going to be automated, like all just robots running them, if not H-1Bs. But it's just maybe 20 or 30 people are operating some of the largest data centers right now. Maybe 50 to 60 in some of the really big ones. But they fly in people to build them. They don't really hire local people. And even if they did, those are temporary jobs. And they eat up all the farmland. I mean, maybe we'll get into some of that. I just Elmer fudded. I'm like, the pain, the horror. You know how when a guy gets sick with the flu, it's the end of the world. That's me now. No, it's really not that bad. I've had really bad pain. I've had like bones sticking out of my arms, like bunny rabbit ears. I don't think you can see the scar. It's right here. You can zoom in. I know I have this. This is Flash from old flower pot Flash from oh man, I'm forgetting the name. Spider Murphy's. It was a tattoo shop I really liked in California. But yeah, I flipped over a bike when I used to have when I used to do some BMX riding, and both bones popped out of the arm. That was not cool. So I know I have been in some insane pain, and this is not that bad. But talking, it doesn't help. The talking hurts. And maybe hearing me hurts too, which I completely understand. Imagine how it is having the thoughts. Imagine my wife in the car for 12 hours. Thankfully, she is as insane as me. Now, she keeps me grounded. Thankfully, she listens and hears me out, though. But I married a doomsday prepper, so she was prepping for doomsday way before we met. She totally gets it. Thank God. There we are right here on our wedding day. That's our wedding day. Beautiful. That was a beautiful day. The Insurance Institute of Hawaii. He's on pain pill. I'm not. I swear. If you listen to any episode, you know, if you're just new to this show for some reason, I just can never talk. Highway Safety, a safety watchdog group funded by insurance companies, recently announced that only cars with driver monitoring technologies will be eligible for its highly regarded safety awards by 2030. So I think that's all ridiculous. You know, I'm not buying cars with that stuff. Oh, well, Shane, you know, lots of cars already have this stuff. I know, but you got to draw the line at something. When I have money, and I can afford things that like I do want. Like I don't really care for things. I have like the same few pairs of pants, a few shirts. Like I like very specific things, and I have a few versions of them. But when I do have, one day I'm lucky enough, if I'm blessed enough to have a little extra money, I want an old truck, like from the 50s or 60s. My first car, I bought for $200, and I was 15. I didn't have a license yet. I was about to get my permit, and yeah, another tangent. I know. It was I think it was in 1950. I gotta find pictures of it, but it was an old pickup, and there was a man in town who smoked a pipe, and his name was Stan. I won't say last names, but he was a cool guy. He had a horse up at the barn, and he worked on old cars. So me, him, and my dad fixed up that car. We painted it black, put a whole new bed in the back of the truck. It was an old Ford. It was beautiful. It was stick shift. So I learned to drive on that thing. I can't drive stick anymore. I got to relearn. That was the only time I drove stick. But I love that truck. It was so sick. And one day I'll get one again. I ended up selling it so I can get a 1988 Honda Accord, which we beat into the ground. I was not a well-behaved teenager. I was in a metal band at this point, and my friends and I all had like beat up old cars from the 80s, and we might have driven into one another for fun on Main Street in Highland Falls. And we did that quite a bit until the cars died. We were bored. If we weren't having band practice, we just crashed for fun. I know it's so stupid, but welcome to small town America. You're like, well, I'm from a small town. We didn't do that. Yeah, I know. Most people didn't. Most people had more logic and cared. But we not only did that for fun, but we filmed it. I got to get my hands on that footage. That'd be fun. Some of those guys listen to the show, so shout out to you guys, my longtime homies. So I got this from Lauren Fix. This is from her Substack, which is carcoachreports.substack.com. And it's one of her perspective on this as well. And this headline caught my eye. Your car isn't yours anymore. The kill switch mandate is real, funded, and coming fast. And I think this came out recently. Yeah, this is from yesterday. If you still believe you own your car, you're already behind the 8 ball. What you actually own is a little stabbing pain. It didn't hurt anybody. It's good for you. What you actually own is a permission slip on 4 wheels, a machine that watches you, evaluates you, and decides in real time whether you're allowed to drive it. Not a police officer, not a court, not even common sense, but instead an algorithm. We are living in the algorithmic state. This is what they are building around us out of Silicon Valley. The people, the tech vampires, the robot cyborgs. They are building the surveillance state with the algorithm like a cage around us. Everything will be run on the algorithm. Everything. It's not going to be something you can escape easily. We're already there, but it's going to get worse and worse. But I have hope in humanity, and I do see people pushing back. It was something I was going to say in a positive light. Multiple data centers are losing out on jobs because people are protesting. There's a lot of opposition. There's a bipartisan effort for people to come together and say, we don't want this. We can agree on this at least. And I think that's great. We don't have to agree with the left. I think the left is totally wild in many ways, but so is the right. And I think we can come together sometimes to laugh, which would be great. You know, people want to laugh together. That's amazing. But also be like, hey, we don't want this in our community. It's disgusting. And there's so many problems with it. But if that sounds something, this is back to our Substack here. If that sounds like something ripped out of a dystopian script, it's because we've crossed the line where dystopia gets rebranded as public safety. Our elected officials have voted for it. The trigger for all this sits inside the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Buried in Section 24220 is a mandate that forces the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to require advanced impaired driving technology in every new car sold in America. That phrase sounds harmless on purpose. Exactly, I agree. Because if lawmakers called it what it actually is, a federally required driver surveillance system with the power to disable your vehicle, there might have been a real debate. Instead, it slid right through. Here's what's coming. Cameras locked on your face, sensors tracking your eyes, software analyzing your behavior, your attention, even your emotional state. The system doesn't look for alcohol impairment. It looks for anything it interprets as a risk. Are you tired, distracted, stressed? That's enough for the system to decide you aren't fit to drive. And once that threshold is crossed, your car can refuse to move. You can sit there with the keys, with the title, and with the payment book in your glove box, and the answer is still no. You're not going anywhere. This is the shift nobody voted for in plain English, and it's already happening. Driver monitoring systems are in millions of vehicles globally. Europe mandates them. U.S. automakers are embedding them. This isn't theoretical. It's slowly being built into new cars, and from 2027, every new car will have it. No exceptions. At the same time, automakers are pushing even further. Ford Motor Company has filed patents that read less like safety features and more like surveillance blueprints. We're talking about biometric identification, behavioral tracking, even the potential to integrate with external databases. Imagine how they'll also try to sell this data to other people, like to sell you to shoot commercials into your face at all times. Like, I get home yesterday, having all these tooth conversations with my wife at the dentist, ads on my phone for teeth. Teeth, dentist, smile, smile, smile. I hate these robots. Your vehicle isn't just transportation anymore. It's a data collection terminal with wheels, and once that data exists, it doesn't stay private. In-cabin monitoring systems are already being used in fleet vehicles, live feeds, driver tracking, behavioral analysis, and it's being sold as valuable data to whoever wants to pay for it. Now, when it comes to like company vehicles, that's up to the company, in my opinion. I'm not the most comfortable with it, but if I'm an employee, I'm not going to be doing things I shouldn't be doing. You know, you're an employee, and is it weird? Sure. Do I like it? Not really, but that's up to them. And, I can see the pros and cons, because there's a Larry Ellison version of it where it's like, we'll keep you on your best behavior, and we can kind of integrate the surveillance state by way of company cameras or police cameras, which is a problem. But then there's like things like that guy, the FedEx driver who killed that girl. And like they caught her in the video with the tracking with the camera for the FedEx car, the truck. And like, thank God we have it. Thank God we had that video, because he was obviously lying about what happened to the girl. And then we have video to prove that he was lying. And I hate that story. Like, I really hate that story so much. That man is a monster. I'm not going to get into all the details. If you don't know about it, you can look up FedEx driver and kills girl. It's just another example of real monsters that live on this planet. But those are when it comes to cameras in cars, obviously pros and cons. I don't want them in our personal cars, but I can understand there are some pros to having them in company cars, although there's also lots of negatives. So now connect the dots, she says. The government mandate meets corporate capability. That's not an accident, that's alignment. And here's where it gets even more convenient for everyone involved, except you. Congress is pouring money into this, about $45 million already allocated for research, with over $100 million backing the driver alcohol detection system for a safety program. So that acronym is DADS. And then there was also MAD, M-A-A-D, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, doing this. So you can see how they're coming at this from that very specific, we want to prevent drunk driving. And I get it. I just don't think we should be employing this sort of system to do it. And it's going to be flawed, and it's also going to be exploited. That's the fact. 100%. We've seen this in the history. We've seen flaws in the systems. That's why we got East Palestine, which is covered extensively in my book as well. my journey to East Palestine after the train blew up, and we see how the systems fail, and there's human flaws and there's mechanical flaws, and that's always obviously going to be the case. But this seems something we could maybe find another solution for. But again, as Thomas Sowell always says, there's no solutions, only trade-offs. But I think we can get better at the trade-offs. I think there's other ways of doing it. You know, because now we have Palantir trying to take over air traffic control. We have Palantir doing USDA, Palantir doing FAA rather. We got to stop. This is not good. This is not the future for children to be growing up into. We got to say no to this. And seeing the families on either side of the aisle stand up and say no to data centers is a good start. And it's happening more and more. There are farmers turning down lots of money, which is a very hard thing to do. I totally understand. A lot of these generational farmers don't have lots of money. A lot of these farms are dying. So when someone comes in and says, hey, here's $200 million for your land, we're going to build a data center on it, I understand how it's very hard to say no. The gas, I love driving, you know, and I don't like flying for many reasons. I really don't like how dehumanizing airports are, but I legit love driving. I've driven around a good portion of this country. I could have flown, but I choose to drive a lot of the time. I love seeing just the culture in different towns, new cafes, what the I listen to the radio, what the radio stations are like as you drive through states, and that station you really like that you found in Ohio drifts into some new station, you know, in Pennsylvania, and you're trying to find a new good station in a new area. I love all these things. I love roadside attractions. I love road stops, rest stops. That is also changing as everything in America is being flattened and condensed into strip malls and glass buildings, and it's gross. And there are still semblances of real America out there. But one of the things we noticed yesterday, we were just like shocked by, was in parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, we were seeing gas for $4.30, unleaded gas for $4.30. Diesel was like $5.85 at some places. I'm just like, this is bad. Not as bad as it. I think the worst in New York was 2016 or 2019, somewhere in that time frame. And we were above $5. It was like $5.02 or something. Terrible. Maybe it was 2019. Yeah, maybe it was around COVID. But it's getting up there again, and it's just you can't afford to live. The groceries are too much. The gas is too much. People commute to work. I mean, the commute's almost too much to afford. You're basically just being paid to drive into work. You're being paid to afford, rather, to drive into work. You are being paid to afford to drive into work and buy a bag of groceries that's $300. This is not good. Not good. But we're here and we're blessed. You know, I don't want to be depressing, but that's just the reality. And anyone telling you otherwise is just a rich scumbag who makes a ton of money and pretends that this isn't happening. And I have nothing against rich people. I'm very happy for people with a lot of money. And if you've earned it, you know, and I don't even mind if you're someone who've inherited it. Like, it's how you act, you know. And there's a lot of people that I've met who have lots of money, and they, I think, willfully act like it's okay out there, you know, because they're such team players. And that to me is just insane. You're probably not talking to enough real people in the world, and you're not experiencing life outside of your wealth bubble. And I support, like, I'm not down with like the whole eat the rich thing, tax the rich thing. That's not what I'm coming at this from. I'm just saying there's an attitude happening right now where it's a lot of rich people trying to tell a lot of us who don't have that much money that actually the economy's fine. Trump's doing a great job. Gas is a little up, but you can afford to pay a little more because we're killing the people in Iran. Like, nah, man, I don't think that's cool. I'm not down with it. I'm not buying it. You are lying to yourself and to everyone else. But yeah, the automakers are complying. This is the future. So be very wary of that. If you are someone who can afford a brand new car in 2027, this will be implemented. They will be studying you. It will be commercialized, commodified, and exploited and hacked at some point. For sure. So that is the show for today. I'm going to go put a little cold compress on my face. Nah. It's not that bad. It's just really uncomfortable to talk with it. And I hope you guys were able to understand most of this episode. My apologies if it really came out just more mumble rappery than usual. But I do try to keep it a little low key usually because I don't want the robot birds to pick up the podcast before we actually air it. These are just real concerns I think everyone should have. But yeah, shout out to all you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in last night. Those comments really do help, and they are an extreme boost to us in the algorithm that it really doesn't like us. And so please do like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And remember, my book is available for pre-order now. I'm so proud of this book, and it'll be out September 1st, but you can pre-order it now on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart, Amazon, Kindle, and hardcover. There will be an audiobook. We're already on some new release bestseller lists, so that's awesome. Thank you so much. Amazon has like multiple different types of lists for new releases. We're not even out yet, and we've cracked the top 10 in a few new release bestsellers, and we're on other like top 100 bestseller new release lists on Amazon, which is amazing since we have a ways to go before it even comes out. So thank you so much for the support. It really means a lot. And have a blessed night, and I will see you all tomorrow.